weighs like 250 in the cruiserweight division. That which never made any sense. And he always killed it. It was always great, but I loved him on the mic because he was such a great bad guy. And then he just sort of vanished. So I didn't see it coming, even though I obviously should have seen it coming. And finally, The Rock is out giving a promo, and the countdown interrupts The Rock's promo, the biggest guy in the WWF at that point, pre-WWE. And the countdown ends, and then there's fireworks, and then the iconic Y2J music starts. Break the walls down, and then Jericho splashes across the screen. Unbelievable.
Yes, the pop.
And then Welcome to Raw is Jericho. Huge pop. Like, the crowd was electric. It was one of the loudest pops I've heard ever in history, and it was such a great debut. AJ Styles had a great debut in WWE. There's
Rumble.
a lot of people that had there's a lot of people that had great debuts, but nothing for me will ever top that Jericho. The build to it, the interrupting The Rock, which you simply don't do that, and then have him go toe to toe on the mic with him, that was insane.
Yeah,
like who does that? That's crazy. It feels like promo suicide to go out there and do that.
Right.
And the only person that it would work with is Chris Jericho.
Right. He could go toe to toe with The Rock. I think all of us of a certain age would cut Rock style promos on the kids in our elementary classes. We would say, "Oh, what is your name?" And then Jimmy in our class would say, "Oh, my name is." It doesn't matter what your name is.
Yeah.
I mean,
Absolutely.
Not to go against The Rock, but Jericho did. He brought his ponytail. He brought that vest, that shirt he had. That was quite the fashion reach. And he, I think what you're
the Gene Simmons ponytail.
The Gene Simmons ponytail. I think what you're speaking to really shows why people are so excited about wrestling now. There is that element of surprise that had been gone for a long time. After WCW went out of business and then TNA sort of drifted off and wasn't a real player, there was no element of those surprise debuts anymore. So I think that's you and I, and again, a lot of our listeners probably feel a lot of nostalgia and that feeling of euphoria when Chris Jericho came out on Raw, or like you said, when AJ Styles entered the ring and he's facing Roman Reigns in the Rumble match. Right. We never thought we'd see that.
Right. Yes, and much like the WWE is really good at moments, and I don't know that necessarily translates to storytelling or booking, but they're really, really, really good at moments. All the moments that I can think of, well, not all of them, most of them are WWE moments. Becky's return, incredible moment. Immediately followed with a giant turd of a squash match against Bianca.
I still haven't gotten over it.
I'm still mad about it, but at the same time, it kind of feels like that was the point. Like, but I'm not mad at Becky though. I'm mad at booking. So it's different. It's weird. I had a hard time with the favorite surprise debut, and I'll tell you why. Even though Jericho, nothing will ever top that, I don't think. Adam Cole is right up there with it in AEW because I wasn't ready for it. I was ready for Bryan Danielson and that music, and that happened immediately after, which I thought was a great swerve.
Oh, yes.
But I was ready for Flight of the Valkyries to start playing, and instead we got It's All About the Boom, and Adam Cole shows up, and I was like, oh, I got off the couch. I was yelling in my living room. I scared, shout out to Ben. I scared Ben, I think, yelling.
Yeah.
It was so great. It was such a great night. I don't know that. I think you're right. The element of surprise, just having left for so long and now being back, is the speculation of what's going to happen and who's coming, or who might be moving, who might be going where. The dream matches that always seemed impossible. Suddenly we had in AEW. This is such a crazy thing. In AEW, Bryan Danielson against Suzuki. Nobody thought that was ever going to happen because it doesn't seem possible.
And on YouTube for free.
for free on YouTube. I mean, it doesn't make any sense. And that's after you had Suzuki was in there already. He wrestled Moxley, right?
Right.
But
right.
Moxley has wrestled so many different people from outside of the company, New Japan, and then he's doing matches over and over again with Nick Gage, which feels like a really painful trilogy to have if he's going to have another one. And just watching all of these people be able to go to, I don't know, PGW or AAA or New Japan, all these MLW, all these small promotions or smaller promotions that they get to go and do what they want because it makes them happy is really cool. I love the idea of the WWE having control over everything so they have a consistent product, but it feels so corporate that it makes it feel a little bit like their creativity is limited because of it.
Right. Well, I think that leads us into our next topic, Brad, of the recent Friday Night War that we had with SmackDown competing against WWE SmackDown competing against AEW Rampage. Now, Brad, you mentioned WWE does a lot of things well, particularly moments. I am curious, what are your thoughts on what we saw this past week with the Friday Night War?
I'll start with SmackDown. So what I really liked about SmackDown was they had a couple of matches on there that were must-sees. They went overtime, and they were extended by a half an hour, and within that half an hour, we got Becky versus Sasha, which was a great match. It was so much fun. Bianca interference. The thing that I loved about it so much is that they don't do enough babyface cheap, I'm going to have a distraction finish things in WWE. It's always predictable. It's always the heel doing heel things. But I love when a babyface does a heel move and then costs somebody a match.
Yeah.
But it's the bigger heel. It's heel on heel in the ring with the babyface outside. But I don't know what Sasha is. And that's confusing. The other thing they don't do a lot, they do babyface versus babyface to build heat. We saw it on Raw this past week with Big E and Drew McIntyre.
Right.
And they don't do heel versus heel in a tag team very often unless it's, or in a match together, unless it's as a tag team, two heels against two baby faces, and the two baby faces are always beefing.
Can they coexist?
Can they coexist?
Can they coexist?
I had to cover my face when you said that. I know it's not a video format, but I hid the shame behind my hands.
That's what a lot of us do during the matches.
Yeah, it's just no stakes and no sense. Doesn't make any sense. It's just to have time filled. It feels like a lot of the time, even though I love the people that are in the ring and I love watching them compete and I love watching them bring their character. I think that's great. I just sometimes I just don't get it. Like what is the function of this thing? How is this building the feud? That being said, I really liked this match that Bianca was on commentary until she got brought into it. Sasha is sort of in the middle. We have heel Bex and we have Bianca babyface Belair over at the booth. And in the middle, you have Sasha, who was throwing forearms at both of them a few weeks back. So I don't really know where she fits. She's just sort of always Sasha. Even if she's a heel or a babyface, she's the boss. That match was great. I did think that the beginning of the match looked almost identical to the match that they had in the tag team at the beginning of the week on Raw. Becky trying to do a leg drop and landing on her butt right out the gate. It was the same thing that happened on Raw. The first few spots were almost identical. I felt like I was watching a rehearsed dance. Then the contract signing happened. And normally, because I'll say this, with SmackDown, there were only a couple of matches. And there was just so much time that was spent with vignettes and recaps. And I don't know if it's because they were trying to capture an audience to have them watch the pay-per-view on Thursday in the morning, our time, in the afternoon in the East Coast, noon, I think. I don't really get that part, but I want to see more wrestling. There's so many great wrestlers that having vignettes or even have them do promos, have more promos. I love this Edge and Seth feud. I love that it's going to end in Hell in a Cell. It's Hell in a Cell where it makes sense.
Right.
It's
Finally.
the end of a feud. It's going to be violent. Lines have been crossed. Their other matches have escalated. The only place it could possibly go to and end is Hell in a Cell. It's perfect. It's perfect. I think what they're doing with Brock and Roman with Paul in the middle has been great. It's been spot on. I think the Eliminator tournament is a way to get people on screen. And the end, that's it. I don't hate it, but I don't love it. I take it or leave it. With AEW, the buy-in, man, incredible. I have my thoughts, but first, do you want to say anything about SmackDown, Tyler?
Brad, you covered it. I really think your point about the 2 points, the repetitive nature of WWE's booking, is so frustrating because we love the talents on the roster, but when we go to literally all of their products, their main US products, SmackDown, you mentioned Raw with Big E and Drew tagging, and then upcoming this week on one of my favorite weekly wrestling shows, NXT 2.0. I don't I don't know how our listeners will feel about that, but 2.0 is definitely a guilty pleasure of your boys. That main event on Tuesday on NXT 2.0 is going to be Braun Breaker and Tommaso versus the Grizzled Young Veteran. So it's the same. Wow. Am I going to watch it? Absolutely. But it's the same booking. Can they coexist? It's as if WWE either thinks we really love this or that we don't watch each show. Right? Like you said with the recaps. It's a very odd system. But in terms of like I said, what you said about the booking, super spot on, and just the talented roster. I really think for fans like you and I who maybe took a break from the product, if you were to now re-engage with pro wrestling, you will notice that the rosters for all of these companies, most noticeably AEW and WWE, are just incredible. It's as if there really is not enough time to fit every single talent, because I think you and I can come up with a list of talents we love who we think can be used better, whether that be Mustafa Ali in WWE or Ethan Page in AEW, or I mean we can go over the women as well in the Queen of the Ring tournament. Yes. And how the lack of time they are getting for these matches is so absurd. So right. You nailed it. And for AEW, the buy-in, man, incredible. Just that list of Danielson and Suzuki. We had Fish and Moriarty. Ty Conti was on there as well. It's amazing. It's amazing. That main event is something I'm still thinking about. The way Danielson and Suzuki, shout out to all the talents on the buy-in, but the way Danielson and Suzuki were laying into each other was it was incredible, man. How can you not love that?
That forearm that Suzuki put on Brian's face, that first forearm, I was convinced he was dead.
Right. The cell.
It was I'm not even convinced he was selling. He made it like he dropped. He dropped. And in an interview he did with I don't know what her name is. It was either a Japanese talent or a Japanese reporter interviewed Danielson afterward, probably for the Suzuki part of it, and was talking to him, and they asked him how he was doing. He's like, well, I feel really beat up right now, and that he thrives on that. And to know that you're about to get punched by somebody, or at least hit with a forearm as hard as somebody can possibly throw it, or a kick to the chest as hard as somebody could possibly hit you. I don't know, man. That takes either a special kind of crazy or a special kind of tough, because having somebody just go, this is going to be fine. Person who is an athlete that I saw lift two people up on their back with their legs, are about to use those legs to kick me in the sternum full force.
Right.
And if I don't know, I forget to exhale on the way out and I don't set my arms straight and engage my core, I'm probably going to break something.
Yes.
Or they are.
Yes.
You know, it's just watching that and knowing the level of skill it takes to do that, because it feels like, oh, they're just in there hitting each other as hard as they can. Like, yeah, well,